how much money did Scott make off the first show to be able to afford a vacation? Facebook.com, I know it's an old website, but it still has its uses. Are we the only people on campus this morning?
Play ball!
OUA After Dark. RMC was not very good when I was growing up in Kingston, and Kevin DeLude was the show. Oh, that has to be Photoshop.
For a lot of us, it was our first playoff experience. We have a pretty young team.
Twitter Wars!
I actually don't like this song.
Oh my goodness.
Play ball!
I've never been a big fan of Valentine's Day either. I sound like such a cynic, I'm sorry.
You're a hater of love and beautiful music,
and
Shelby.
happiness.
Last year, the Laurier Golden Hawks captured the OUA title, and I think it was in part because Laura was able to see things differently.
Now back to more OUA Today.
A live read off the top. A true pro.
Crisp and clean on a Monday morning where it is freezing.
It is freezing cold out there, everyone. Welcome inside OUA Today. I'm your host, Marshall Ferguson, here to remind any students that visited Cancun over Reading Week. That's not how real life works. The government will eventually ask for all that tequila money back in the form of OSAP, so just be prepared for that mentally. Joined alongside by Amanda Weldon. Last week you said hi world. What do you got for us this week?
I used to be on another show, and the guy who used to come in after me would always be like, hello world. So I was like, I'm just gonna...
Hello world, that's okay.
He's obviously a veteran. He knows what he's doing.
Everybody needs their tagline, so we're okay with that. Scott Hasty, again, not here. We might hear from him later on, not sure. OUA Today is brought to you by the home of the original Buffalo Wing and Hump Day Wednesday Anchor Bar located in downtown Hamilton at Jackson Square. How to listen? Go to tunein.com and search CFMU 93.3, cfmu.msumcmaster.ca, or check our Twitter for the link, because we usually post it there before the show. I believe we did this morning. If not, I'll send it out for you right now. How to reach out as well, at OUA Today. If you go to our Twitter this week, you'll see we have a shiny new logo.
Which is a microphone.
Yeah,
for anyone
cool.
who isn't sure.
Why? Did you think it was going to be misconstrued as
No.
something else? Should we have chosen a less questionable logo? Perhaps not.
Voting on Twitter now.
Yes. At Marsh2Fergs, at Weldon Amanda as well, if you'd like to reach out to us. On the show we have coming up for you over the next 54 minutes or so, we will converse about triple overtime hockey games, the Oscars, which... so much to talk about, but this is days when I wish I had your old, what'd you call it? The old cinema show.
Oh, the Cinemac. This is the day when I want Neil Patrick Harris to just come in.
He's probably pretty hungover because he didn't have many good reviews last night, so I'm guessing it was a bender kind of night.
I blame the Raiders though.
For NPH. Yeah.
We will talk about that.
There we go. Okay. Yeah, we'll touch on the Oscars. Mac Men's Volleyball 3-peats. NASCAR.
Boogity, boogity, boogity! Let's go racing, boys!
Man, that was an awesome race yesterday. I think I'm the only person in the world to watch it though. U of T women's volleyball are champions. Scott Hasty will hopefully join us from his living room. Fraser Caldwell might as well. Curling. How many uniforms is too many? OUA Hoops playoffs. Donovan Bennett in studio around 9:30 we are hoping. He's a busy man trying to make his way here. This week's OUA marquee matchup. We'll decide what it is by the end of the show. We'll have a fan vote on Twitter. And much, much more. I don't really know where to begin this morning because I had so much on the list once I came in to start running everything down for you, Amanda. And when I looked at it, I was like, I kept reordering the list over and over and over again because there was just too much going on. And I put down our starting five, and then I would have to take something out and put something else in and take a new thing out and put a different thing in. It was one of those weekends in the OUA where it's like there's curling, there was fencing going on, there was men's and women's basketball final weekends of regular season action, men's and women's volleyball happening as well. The championships, like the championship season in the OUA, and I didn't have an appreciation for it because I was just a football guy who spent my winter kind of working out, getting ready for spring camp, and was oblivious to a lot of this stuff. Now that I've started covering it,
it's a long road.
There is a ton going on. I talked a couple of weeks ago about this being like the mini Olympics in the sense that it's always going on and there's all these different sports you have to cover and it's year round. Well, think about what makes the Olympics so hectic is that it seems like there's sports on 24/7 for 2 weeks and everything's jammed into a 2-week period.
It stresses me out.
This is the Olympics spread over a 9-month student athlete, period. Right? So, I am definitely gaining an appreciation for how much goes on in the average year. Where I would like to begin, though, despite how hectic it is, senior day.
Yes. And Carleton graduating some huge players.
Yes.
This year. The Scrub brothers obviously dominating the offense for Carleton, as well as Victor Razzo, a past McMaster athlete.
They pour in so many points for the Scrub brothers. And Tommy Scrub's not that they're not both great defenders, but Phil traditionally has carried a lot of the scoring load. But man, Tommy's length playing at Carleton, he's been putting on quite a show on defense. He's been matched up against some of the very best in the country for the last couple of years. So they're graduating a lot, but kind of on the sentimental side as well, outside of, whether or not you've won CIS championships like the Carleton Ravens and those guys have been very successful. There was just a ton of great ceremonies.
Yeah, a lot of jerseys being handed out, a lot of flowers, a lot of just overall speeches. I mean, you got a really great one for Isabel Ormond from McMaster women's basketball. She actually started as a walk-on for this program and then just developed as a player, as a true athlete. So that was really great to see. When I was lucky enough to be able to see Isabel have her ceremony. She was actually the only graduating senior on the McMaster women's basketball team, if you aren't familiar with her situation. And she didn't get to play this year. She was injured. She was out for the entire year. So that's a tough spot to be put in as a fifth-year senior, but she handled it with a lot of class. She was a real leader on the bench for the McMaster women. And then I saw Taylor Black and Adam Prezzuti as well for the men's basketball team. I'm sure you probably saw some volleyball seniors day. What was your seniors day like? Ours changed a little bit because we had speeches going on at our final ceremony, but this one was kind of just hand out the flowers, hand out because also it's before the game.
Yes.
So you don't want to get too.
I know, it's tough.
Mushy-gushy before the game.
Yeah, it's a tough spot to be put in as an athlete because I know they stopped the warm-up. The actual warm-up clock for the men's basketball game just stopped.
Yeah.
At 8 minutes.
Yeah.
And the refs came over to the table and they were like, what's going on? We're like, oh, ceremonies. They're like, well, they didn't tell us about this.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, well, obviously, it's seniors day and it's the last regular season and it's going to happen. Plus it was a game against Algoma, so it was likely going to be a blow. So it wasn't a big deal. Nobody really cared, but, they had to stop, and then Adam and Taylor bring their families out on the court. Amos Connolly gives these great speeches about what it means to have these guys in the program over their last 5 years. And then it's like, okay, everybody get intense again.
Let's play ball!
Let's
seriously.
get back into the mood. And that's a very tough thing to go through as an athlete psychologically.
Yeah, and for me, I remember watching so many seniors nights too. I don't know what it was, but I think our season landed on everyone's senior night.
Right.
So you just have to put on your jacket, stand on the baseline, clap for these girls. And it's awkward when they're people who don't even play that much.
Yeah.
You did it. You got it done.
And that's what I find cool too, is that you do get recognized regardless of your contribution to a team over an extended period of time, right? Everybody's involved. It's more of I hate sometimes, and I'm guilty of using it when we use the word family around all these teams because they do become your family for 5 years. You're surrounded by them. You love them. You hate them. There's a lot of aspects that are very similar. But the idea that you are celebrated by everyone regardless of necessarily your statistics, your merit, your championships, all that, I find that really cool because that's very unique.
It is
in
really
university
nice.
athletics, especially getting to experience it. We don't really have a senior day in football. They just do, instead of introducing the entire offense, the entire defense, or the entire team out to midfield, they call out the seniors one by one. And my senior experience was very cool because it was a lot of just knocking heads with guys, and we all ran out, and every guy that ran out just had a huge smile on his face because it was kind of when you put a jersey on as many times as we were able to here at McMaster, to play against some of the best teams in the country, and you do it with a group of guys, you are naturally going to grow a bond with them. And every guy that came out was just smiling through his helmet and didn't really say anything, just kind of gave the big bear hug to everyone and would just smash heads with each other and woo, and little bit excitement. And it's funny because people don't really get that, right? Because we don't get mic'd up anymore because the score isn't broadcasting the games. And they used to mic guys up. But
that soft supple voice is just
but when we had that, I thought that was really special. So I wanted to point out the senior day experiences that went on around. There was a ton of great pictures too. We'll put them up on the video podcast of ceremonies happening all over the place, all around the province. But in the meantime, it is time to get into our starting five. Where would you like to begin, Amanda?
I want to start with women's volleyball, obviously.
Women's volleyball? All right, let's do it.
Guelph University.
That is not the starting five music at all. There we are. Go ahead. Women's volleyball.
All right, we started at Guelph University this weekend. OUA Championships. Western coming out through the back. I mean, we talked to Kate Siofaz last weekend. She was talking about coming into this experience being an underdog, and they did it. They beat Guelph in the bronze.
Yeah,
and
in Guelph.
In Guelph,
Yeah.
and that's really awesome because from the past, being on the volleyball team, playing Guelph in their own home arena, it's not an easy thing to do. But obviously you had Toronto Varsity Blues coming out with the win.
Yep.
And you know what?
Dominant team all year.
Yeah, it was obvious and it needed to happen. And I'm really excited to see Toronto compete on a CAS level because Ontario women's volleyball hasn't been represented as strongly as out in the West, typically. So I'm very, very excited to see this team because they're just strong all around. They obviously have an amazing coaching staff who comes from a huge volleyball background. So very excited to see that.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's I think we saw U of T at the end of the regular season lose to Ottawa, if I'm not mistaken, right? And I talked to Kat Sofias last week about it with you about the fact that, you know, maybe U of T was beatable down the stretch. They weren't.
They were not. And they get to play in their home gym for CIS.
Yeah, which is awesome. That's staying at home. I feel for, again, we were going to have Danny Domenienko and Coach Dave Preston, who standout OUA championship. We'll get to all of that in a little bit with Fraser Caldwell of McMaster Athletics, but we were going to chat with them about it, but they have to get on a flight to Saskatoon
at 5:30 this morning.
At 5:30 this morning. So
upsetting.
That's why we couldn't get a hold of them in studio, in case you're wondering, because it would have been very easy with them on campus. But the idea that the U of T women get to sleep in their own beds and go to the CIS championship instead of the men's volleyball team here at McMaster, Waterloo, and York, who all qualified for Saskatoon, getting on flights this morning, this afternoon, today, whatever, and flying out there, I think that's a huge advantage. You would have to think that helps a lot.
So you think about it, you're just like, oh yeah, volleyball or sports, I want to travel, I want to go different places, travel across Canada. There is nothing better on a cold day than your warm bed. Okay?
I think any student can appreciate that. How many students, raise your hands as you're sitting inside right now, hiding from the cold, have gone to an 8 a.m. class and then crawled back into your bed for 4 hours in the middle of the day because it's freezing out and we all have to walk 15 minutes to class unless you're lucky enough to live on campus. Yeah.
Looks unanimous.
The crowd has spoken. It's all good. So women's volleyball, congratulations to the U of T Blues. OUA women's hockey. It's heating up right now. The Toronto Blues beat Windsor 2-1 Saturday in overtime for a 2-game sweep of the Windsor Lancers. Taylor Day with the winner in Game 2 in overtime. Guelph beat Ryerson. That was also a sweep, 2-0 in the series. Christine Grant with the double overtime winner in Game 2. So many overtime games, but none beaten by Laurier and Queens. Game 1, triple overtime.
What does this mean?
At Laurier. Laurier's Tammy Freyberger scored the only goal as Laurier won 1-0 after 95 minutes of playoff hockey. Also, shout out to Justin Fateau and Shelby Blackley, who we had on the program last week. You can check out our interview with her at OUA TV. It's up there and on our YouTube channel as well. She talked about the women's hockey team and having Laura Brooker come back from the Canadian Universidad Championships and the effect that it would have on the team and having a leader and a captain like Laura. And then Shelby has to call 95 minutes of playoff scoreless action. I called Algoma McMaster on Saturday for basketball. The men's game was 100-51.
Yeah, it's a rough life. This is what I like about calling volleyball. Because at least there's a point every...
It was, okay, but I'm getting to, I agree with that very much, because it's always back and forth, and there's always swings of emotion, and usually there is in basketball as well. I'm not discounting that. There isn't any sport, but the Algoma McMaster game, I just thought about it as I was thinking about Shelby calling 95 minutes of scoreless action. The Algoma McMaster basketball game was not the most exciting thing I have ever covered or called, and there was not a lot to talk about, and we tried and we got through, and I hope that we entertained everyone who was watching on OUA TV. But I'm trying to imagine what Shelby talked about first, second, start of the third overtime. Like there's your storylines. If you're not familiar with broadcasting, all of the storylines that you've built and that you've written down are dead by that point. You've told your stories. Your stories are gone. You are now alone.
Everyone knows each player personally on a different level now.
Yeah, it's so true. I'm just glad that there aren't any horror stories like back in the day of college broadcasting games where guys would be calling the game by themselves before there was kind of the set established idea of play-by-play in color. Used to be a lot of people who would call. Bruce Arthur tweeted with me a while ago, talking about his experiences in student broadcasting, and he sent me a horror story of him broadcasting a game from the roof of the University of, I want to say, Saskatchewan stadium during the winter, where the wind was so loud they didn't have any mic covers, and all he could hear in his ears was feedback from the wind coming through, and it was like -20, and he was broadcasting from the top of the stadium, and he was by himself. He was color and play-by-play.
Just to save my ears.
Yeah, but he was color and play-by-play in -20, so he was kind of like tweeting back and forth with some people, and he does a good job interacting with student journalists as well. But he was saying how, like, there's a lot of experiences like that. So
I would hate to be the person calling for Carleton basketball.
That could be fun. Because then you just get to go into the human interest side of things, because the score is irrelevant unless you're playing any of the 3 or 4 teams. I should also mention that we're going to have Chris Oliver, the head coach of Windsor men's basketball, on soon. I tried to get him this morning, a little bit of late notice, and he was running around, so unable to get him. But back to women's hockey, that triple overtime game, Shelby and Justin did a great job calling it and keeping the fans interested through 3 overtimes. In game 2, went to overtime again. Laurier won that 3-2. Laurier women's hockey has been around for 21 years and has never failed to advance to at least the conference semis. Pretty amazing. Western also beat Nipissing 2-0 in that series. Western goaltender Kelly Campbell, not Cassie Campbell, Kelly Campbell, 30 saves on 32 shots, and this was Nipissing's first ever OUA women's hockey playoff series in their only their second season of competition. So congrats to them. They sent out a really cool picture of a goal celebration that just said, "This is our first ever OUA playoff goal. Congrats to the girls." And it was like they were just the most hyped athletes I've ever seen. So I thought that was really cool. Next round, it'll be Guelph versus Windsor, Western Waterloo. Western Waterloo begins Wednesday evening at Thompson Arena in London. Third in our starting 5, women's basketball playoffs. They are set. The seedings are all up on OUA.ca. You can check them out there. Some weekend women's action in the rematch of the Laurier-Windsor game that shocked a lot of people early on in the season when Laurier went to Windsor and got a win. The rematch was at Waterloo. Windsor defeats Laurier 77-68. It was the OUA marquee matchup of the week. Carissa Williams poured in 14 points in the first quarter, leading Windsor to a 14-point lead after 10 minutes. So she was a bit of the difference early on.
Sounds big, but not as big as Julissa Williams.
Yeah. She is so good.
Going into this last game, she had 497 points, going to beat the all-time record high of 506 points set by Jenny Vaughn in 2013.
Jenny Vaughn of St. Mary's. Just around the corner here.
That is so awesome.
Yeah, I got to watch her. She was a really creative player as well. She was pretty special. But
when you have a moment like that and someone absolutely huge like Julissa Williams beats your record, what do you think you're feeling? Like, you're sad, but you're also like, wow, this girl is something. Yeah, it's very true. So she had a pretty special performance. The other special performance, for different reasons, Western Waterloo, the end of the women's basketball final. We'll get to that in a couple of minutes. A couple of quick hitters for you before we go away here. Curling finals today. They are at Guelph. So make sure to tune into that. We will mention that in the big finish. We're going to actually go to the break real quick. When we come back, we're going to have Fraser Caldwell of McMaster Athletics, and he'll be chatting a little bit about the weekend's action and perhaps men's volleyball three-peat for the Marauders. You are listening to OUA Today on CFMU 93.3.